Welcome to Next Level Play Therapy, a weekly podcast dedicated to supporting the next generation of child and adolescent therapists to provide exceptional play therapy services. We'll explore all things play therapy to elevate your work with children and adolescents using the therapeutic powers of play. I'll discuss practical tips and ideas so you can provide a transformative experience for your young clients and make a real difference in their lives. So get ready to take your play therapy skills to the next level and make a lasting impact in the lives of children, adolescents, and families. Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of Next Level Play Therapy, and I am super excited this week to have a guest, Luk-Worrall, who is based in the UK in the London area, and she is a music therapist, also trained in EMDR to work with trauma. She works with children who have experienced grief and loss. And so today's topic is going to be about music and therapy and how we can integrate music as an expressive arts modality into the play therapy process. Or if you're not a play therapist, then how you can integrate music into your treatment process. So let's get started for today. We would both love to know who's here. So if you're watching live, please feel free to post in the comments. Where are you from? What population do you work with? Are you trained as a music therapist? Are you a play therapist and you like using music? Are you a creative arts therapist and you like using music? So lots of different, I think people come from a lot of different therapeutic modalities, and we kind of converge in the expressive arts space. And then I always find it helpful to get conversations going with people from specific creative arts modalities, just to kind of help us understand the distinctions and what sets them apart, but also areas where we have in common, and how can we use these amazing ways to help children, adolescents, and I would say even adults to heal using these modalities. So Crystal is the founder of Clap and Toot, and she has a website called clapandtoot.com. We'll give some more information about that at the end. If you have questions, feel free to ask those. If you find the information helpful, please feel free to share these across your social media platforms. And let's get started. So welcome, Crystal.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, all the good stuff that I didn't mention.
You mentioned plenty. I'm Crystal. I have a private practice in London called Clap and Toot, where we focus on working with the adoption community and the special guardianship community. And I also spend half of my work time working as an EMDR therapist at a children's hospice in London called Shooting Star. So my work is very much an integration of both. So EMDR gave me the trauma-informed approach that I now have, whereas music therapy gave me the freedom to create and the freedom to express and the freedom to experience and be with people that I really enjoy doing.
One of the things that intrigued me when you guys reached out was the combination. I don't know if combination is the right word, but I don't even know if integration is the right word, but the combination or integration of EMDR and music. And in my mind, I can kind of conceptualize how that works. And I was curious for you as a music therapist, like how do you identify music therapy and What is that? What is music therapy? And then I thought we could also talk a little bit about like the EMDR thing and how do you do that and what does that look like with children and families who are grieving?
Mm. Music therapy, I think if you ask different music therapists, everybody could have a different answer. For me, I think it's really about using music to connect, to make human connection. And it sounds unhelpfully vague, but I'm going to be a
Yeah.
bit more unvague about it.
Yeah.
Um,
I loved what you said, just for the record. It didn't sound good to me. I was like, oh, that sounds so good.
but that's I think that's one of the weakness of music therapy because it can sound so good. Where it's the sentence, "Oh, using music to make human connection is so yummy," but actually, when you sit down with a client and with parents, they just go, "What? What do you mean?"
That's a
So
really good point.
I think in music, whether we think about it or not, whether we cognitively, intentionally make music or not. So from a baby crying to someone screaming, there is something very innate about music, or at least sound that comes from our voice. So that is one spectrum of music or of sound, but the other spectrum is this highly organized art form. So Bach, chorale, that's the other end of the spectrum, isn't it? So you can go as instinctive as possible with music, but you can also make it such a cognitive exercise if you wanted it to be cognitive. And I find that in music therapy sessions, we very much can go flexibly within that spectrum. We explore human experience through the spectrum of music. So in my sessions, there's a lot of clinical improvisation involved, especially with children who struggle to use words. Either they are not ready to express themselves verbally or they can't physically use words. Whereas with more verbal, so say adults or adolescents, young people, sometimes we use the more organized version or we use the more organized feature of music, thinking about how a specific emotion felt or sound in a piece of music. So there's a kind of a strand in music therapy called music imagery, which I love because essentially is kind of helping people to put what they can't verbally describe into music. So we will ask questions like, okay, so that in that time when you feel very anxious, how did that feel in the body? They might say it felt like someone is squeezing my core and it felt like my shoulders are tensing. Then I might ask, how would that sound like as a piece of music? So it might be very fast. What about the pitch? Is it up and down? Is it a very wide pitch, or is it high pitch constantly, or is it very low pitch? So you can be, with music, you can be very cognitive about it, which sometimes is helpful when we think about emotions that we can't describe. Because if we think about subconscious materials, sometimes the mind just don't want to go to somewhere very painful. But if you don't
Right.
go there, you can't really process it. So I think music provides safety in our line of work.
That makes sense too, because when you were describing that, I was thinking about the somatic aspect of what you were asking your clients to do. And I think as play therapists, we do that as well. And then we'll kind of find different avenues to do that. And I thought it was really interesting how you use music and the different aspects of music to help them find another expressive way of exploring emotions, but also that mind body connection of emotions to help beginning to process those. And in my head, I was thinking, oh, I guess that's where you would kind of line that up with EMDR, then beginning to set that stage a little bit of really helping them to connect those painful experiences, even the ones like I'm super um interested. I was just say nerdy, super nerdy. I am nerdy, but I'm pretty sure there are nerdier people than me with neuroscience and attachment. Um, so in my head, I'm like, are you super? It's busy in my head. Um, but I can see where, if we're thinking also about those implicit experiences that like you were talking about, they don't necessarily have access to give
Mm.
those things language, or even some of the kids you were talking about maybe that don't have the language skills yet, even I like the lack of a better word, but like the mechanical skills for expression from a language standpoint, being able to give them another way of processing it using music sounds
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And you point out something quite interesting about music and EMDR and how it fit together. For
Mhm.
me, I think for a lot of people, what's really difficult to wrap their heads around is if you know EMDR is incredibly structured. It's an 8-phase protocol.
Mhm.
We've got a manual, we've got language, we've got scripts. It's very structured. Whereas if you
Yeah.
think about music therapy or psychodynamically informed improvisation-based music therapy, and I'm guessing it's quite similar in play therapy as well, it's a free-flowing process. And
Mhm.
how does the two marry? Um,
Right?
but
Yes.
I think that's why, as a music therapist, EMDR was really attractive to me, because as a music therapist, yes, I do love that improvisation stance, and I am in no way saying music therapy alone is not enough as an intervention.
Right.
But there is beauty in order. I'm just thinking about my musical background. I grew up learning classical music. I'm a pianist, and I used to play Bach. I used to play Mozart, and as lovely as it is to improvise completely freely in sessions, you just think that actually, that there is beauty in clear boundaries as well.
Mhm.
And some of that comes with just the structure of music therapy sessions. But clearly, I think at a point in my career where I was wanting to do EMDR sessions, I was looking for a deeper understanding in trauma and attachments, because that's
Mhm.
when I've worked with the adoption community and the bereavement community for a few years. And there is just something deeper that I wanted to get into. I wanted another tool to use. I want a structure in my life. So it's not entirely selfless. That I think part of me as a therapist, as a clinician, I long for structure as well. So I started doing the EMDR training, and it was it was a culture shock, because that level of,
Yeah.
when this happened, you do this, and then there's this, and then there's this. It's absolutely unheard of in music therapy.
Right.
Yeah, so it was very unfamiliar for me. But once I finished the training, and I feel like I have a bit more confidence, I have a bit more freedom through supervision to kind of think about how to integrate these two things, then you start seeing a lot of things in common, actually, between how trauma manifests itself in the body and music, because music is is a physical experience.
Mm.
Just when
You
you
feel
can't
it. Yeah.
you can't have music without a body. You can't experience music without feeling it in your body. It's vibration. When you talk, when you sing, you feel vibration in yourself. When you're watching someone drumming, you feel the vibration. Even if you listen to a piece of music with headphones on, it's still vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of our innate ability to move with music
Mm-hmm.
is movement. So there is something very innate and instinctive about music, and it's before we can form words.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it a really important tool, even in EMDR, with, say, adopted children who have had early childhood trauma, who have had attachment disruption early on, because their ability to understand what's happening in the body is different from ours, and their ability to use words might be different from ours as well. I'll give you an example. One of the exercises that I often do in the first few sessions when I just met a child, I asked them, how does excitement sound to you? How would that sound on a piano? And some of them they would just go for it, and it's just like very frantic, usually high pitch, usually very fast. And then I asked the same question: how does anxiety sound to you? And then they did exactly the same thing. And actually, it's very interesting in that the way that children, or the way that young people experience anxiety and excitement is very similar at a bodily level. And then you think about regulation. You think about how parents tell you that, oh yeah, my child, he was having such a lovely time. I don't know what happened. One moment he was giggling, he was laughing, and then another, and then just a second later, it was completely dysregulated. But actually, when you think about the physical experience of anxiety and excitement, they have a lot in common. And we were able to use music to help us understand that. So that's an example of that connection.
That's very interesting. Do you ever, so when you were talking about adoption and working with kids who experience the early attachment wounds, do you ever have parents in the sessions with the kids doing some of that attachment work using music?
Yeah, sometimes we do. I would say more often in EMDR sessions than in music therapy sessions, because with EMDR is specific in the bilateral stimulation. And when I say bilateral stimulation, it means anything that involves kind of left, right, the body going left, right, alternatively. So the name EMDR comes from eye movement.
Right.
But actually, our tool really is bilateral movement, because we're trying to encourage the brain to make connections. So we know that through bilateral movement, the body's more able to process some of the difficult memories. I can go very geeky on that, but I might save that for another time. Yeah. So very often in EMDR sessions, I mean, I don't need to tell you, it's just the weirdest thing. If you tell a 7-year-old, now you move your eyes left to right, follow my fingers, they're not going to do it.
Right.
And even if you tell them, now do that, they might do that. But actually, we want to prioritize giving them space to do the processing. In EMDR with adopted children, we often do a kind of a technique called narrative, where we consult with the parents or the social worker to write out their life story and how they were removed, why they were removed from the birth family. Did they spend time in foster family? Was it a positive experience? And what are some positive experiences that the child can hold on to at different points? And what are the difficult times? And we write that in a third person stance. So we don't write it directly about little Jimmy. We write it about a little bear called Jake. to give a bit more distance.
Right.
But as I read that story to little Jimmy, I might ask the parents, can you do gentle tapping? Because there is something very valuable about developing that co-regulation skills. And also I'm trying to not be too fake here. There is something really valuable in adoptive parents seeing that the child is capable of processing some difficult trauma from the past.
That
So
makes
that,
sense.
that kind of giving the parents hope as well. So we do sometimes have parents in the room, especially if the child feels a lot more comfortable. I am
Right.
essentially a stranger to them, and I'm a stranger reading the life story to them. So it is often helpful to have a trusted adult in the room as well. Whereas with music therapy, it's slightly different in that we know that the child's relationship with the adoptive parents sometimes can be very complicated. And therefore the family home as an environment might not be the most neutral environment for therapy sessions to happen. So sometimes we offer those sessions at school where they have very clear structure, where they have routine, where they feel very safe. And can practically it would mean that we will see the child in a one-to-one manner. But I think it's equally helpful for some of the older children to have that one-to-one space to explore some difficult themes that they experience with adoptive parents, because they might not have the confidence in their bond to kind of say it. Actually, I don't like the tuna melt you made yesterday, because then they might think, oh, if I say that, what if they don't like me? Would I be sent back? There is a much bigger baggage for them to be able to voice what they think of their parents honestly. And so it's quite helpful sometimes to have that space as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because you were talking about so using music therapy can be on a spectrum of very structured to very unstructured, and then integrating in another modality that's very, very structured, especially when you're working on some of those trauma experiences, and some of those can include the attachment experiences. I think in play therapy, we experience similar things in terms of trying to figure out how are we going to integrate the modalities that we're learning. How do we take play and make it therapeutic, and not just like one of the questions that comes up all the time, because I do a lot of consultation and I have a consultation program called Play Therapy Academy. And now I started a membership for people that didn't need Play Therapy Academy. It's called Play Therapy Elevation Circle. That one's newer. But in Play Therapy Academy, one of the things over the years that has come up quite a bit is, which I assume it's similar for music therapy, which is, well, how do I know if it's more than just playing, like just playing in the therapy session? And to me, this is where your theory models come into play, just by the nature of being in a therapy office with the trained play therapist, or in your case, a trained music therapist who also has some other modalities that you've learned as well. But our presence in there, in and of itself, just our presence makes it different. But I'm kind of guessing that you also get that question of, well, aren't you just doing music? And how is that therapeutic? And then also, like, the second kind of layer of that doesn't necessarily come from parents as much, I think, from in my field, more the play therapists of I have these different modalities like play therapy. I know the term therapeutic powers of play, but I don't really know what that means a lot of times until we really look at it. But how do I integrate these two different things? And you were talking a little bit about that. So I kind of did a wide spectrum there all over the place, from like, how do you make sure, not how do you make sure, but what are your thoughts on why is it not just, we're just playing music in there? And that whole piece of, as you're integrating music and the work that you're doing, how for you, are you able to do that?
I think
I
think it is actually about communications. How do we communicate our work effectively with people who are not in the room? Because we don't need to convince ourselves that we're doing therapy. I mean, if you do, then you might need your own therapy, and you definitely need supervision if you question that. But I think another way to look at music therapy is to use music to achieve non-musical goals. And if you think of it this way, then you ought to be able to articulate your goals. What are you trying to achieve? And I think this is the part where I think in creative therapy, in creative modalities, that we don't talk about enough. Because if we don't talk about that, there is a danger that our work would sound wishy-washy.
That's a good point.
But I think we shy away from talking about it because it takes away the creativity, or some of us might feel like it takes away the creativity of the process, of the therapeutic process, which is essentially what we do. So I think, to answer your question, it is not about questioning whether our work is therapeutic or not. It is about how do we communicate our work to show people that our work is effective and is therapeutic. And for me, one of the best ways to do that is to be very clear about what you're trying to achieve in sessions.
I agree. Sorry.
No, it's all right. And therefore, when you review it, you have to be able to articulate your clinical thinking. Why am I playing? Why did I respond to the client's music that way? And if I'm able to articulate it in clinical language and communicate that with the person who's asking me, well, aren't you just playing music? Actually, I think that answers the questions. If we are able to use clinical language to answer that query, then the work is very clear that we have engaged our therapeutic thinking in the process.
I totally agree, and I kind of say that pretty similar along the same lines that you explained it. That's kind of how I explain it as well. And I think the hard part is when people are just learning these modalities, there's a level of imposter syndrome that comes up, and I don't feel confident in my own skills. So when I get asked these questions, I don't really know how to explain it, which to me, you kind of alluded to supervision and consultation was really, I think, important to, one, help boost your skill level, which is going to boost your confidence.
It reminds me of a conversation I had with my placement supervisor. So when I was when I was training, I was talking about how guilty I felt about leaving, because I was leaving, my placement was finishing, and it was hospice work. Hospice work, you have a lot of focus on death and living. That's another little nugget. When we do hospice work, we do the work of death, but that also means that we're doing the work of living, because you can't do the work of death without doing the work of living. Anyway,
that's a really good point. I love that.
Yeah, she is full of little nuggets like that. My supervisor, my placement supervisor. But in our last supervision session, I was feeling awfully guilty about leaving a client and feeling that I couldn't see it till the end with my client. See it till they die. And she said to me, "Crystal, I think you've got to be more professional." And she said, it sounds awful when I say it like this, and I don't mean it in a rude way. Actually, part of the value of our work is the boundary. And actually, when we are so in our head thinking, "Oh, I've really let this person down. I'm not good enough. Am I even doing this?" Actually, the time that we spend kind of thinking about those things are times that we can't be present with our client, and we can't put our focus on our client. And then that is not to say that those thoughts are not valid and those thoughts are not clinically valuable, because we do need to acknowledge those thoughts and be curious about whether it's countertransference or whether it's our stuff or not, or maybe perhaps it's both. But I think it's important for us to be able to kind of look at it very objectively and think, right, I'm questioning my work here. What is it? Is it because I don't know what I'm doing? Is it because the client's response is not something that I expected? Is it because I'm not seeing the results that I want to see? And then you question, actually, is the therapy for me or for my clients? So allow yourselves to be informed by those thoughts. And actually, those are really valid and prompts for us to be curious about.
Yeah. So we have a question, actually. Hey, Sharon Ann. Sharon Ann and I connected on LinkedIn. So Sharon Ann asks, in play therapy, it's a really good question, Sharon Ann. In play therapy and music therapy, do you find that the client emotionally regulates more through the toys or through the therapist's body language and voice? How does the scaffolding also play out in music therapy? Which she then adds, how does scaffolding play out in the environment as well? That's a great question.
Yeah.
That emotion regulation piece, and where does that come from, do you think?
I think about what the client is exposed to in a music therapy session. So there is the room, so like Sharon said, there's the environment, the music therapy room. There is me, and then there is this music. So let's take them apart. There are three elements. So in terms of the environment, I imagine it's the same in play therapy as well.
Yes, I was just thinking about the same three things. Yeah. Instead of music, it would be whatever the toys are in the play therapy playroom.
Yeah, consistency, especially in adoption work. You might not be surprised, but some children are extremely hypervigilant. So if I take out one beater from a jar of beaters, they would know. They would immediately walk in a room and they would ask, "Oh, where's that rainbow beater gone?" They would know, and that's very telling. That's from the trauma they had. They have had to be very hypervigilant when they were little. They have to check the environment and make sure that they're safe. So there is the consistency in the room, consistency in session time and session duration. and whether the room is set up safely or not. And that would be different depending on the child. You might find a child who is really keen to open the lid of the grand piano, and then you think, actually, this might not be the best room to use. And other children just, don't think about the lid at all. It doesn't interest them. So it really depends from the child to child, but also accessibility as well. A wheelchair-bound child would need instruments that's within their reach. So there is lots of thoughtfulness around the setup of the room, what kind of instruments the child wants. Something I like doing in one of the first few sessions is, if I work in a school, I would take them to the school hall where all the instruments are, and I will ask them to choose their own instruments. So there is some sense of empowerment in there, but also, giving them the choice. Tell me what instruments are you interested in. So that's the environment. And then there's there's me, the therapist, and how I present myself. And I think consistency is important. So you see a lot of school. In fact, it's quite funny. One of the schools that I go to, bless them, they have, every week I go in, because I go in on a Friday. So every week I go in, they have a different theme. So they have Give Racism the Red card, where everybody dresses red, and they have Crazy Hair Day, where like the headmaster wear a crazy wig, and sometimes I like to join. I like to join in subtly, but they always ask me, "Have you missed the memo again, Crystal? Why aren't you coming in with pink wig?" And actually, there is a rationale for that, because I want to present to be someone who's consistent and someone who's routine, someone who's safe, and actually rocking up to school with pink hair one week suddenly is not the safest thing. And yes, our voice, the tone that we use, we know that children take in our tone and our facial expressions and our gestures before they take in the words that we say. And I often, one of the phrases I love using, even with adults, like with bereaved parents, I love using, is when someone is dysregulated, say when someone's having a flashback or panic attack, is the survival parts of the brain kicking off. So the survival part of the brain is trying to keep them safe, is trying to do its job. And that part of the brain doesn't speak English. That part of the brain speaks sensory information. So we're talking about gesture and the tone of voice, the pitch of voice, how wide the pitch range. So if you think about me talking now, actually our pitch range is quite a small range. But if I talk like this and I talk like that, actually, just for me, talking like that, it kind of gave me a kind of a body shock, and then you wonder, how would that feel for a young person? So there is a lot about the kind of being quite curated about the kind of music we use and how we sing, our singing voice and the kind of piano. So I'm a pianist, the kind of musical contribution I make. So being very mindful of that. And that kind of touched on the third presence, the music. And like I said earlier, what I love about music is you can be as structured as you like, and you can be as free flow as you like. So if you think about, say, the most joy to the world, why does that sound comforting to us? It's because the rhythm is very steady. It's not joy to the world, the Lord has come. Is very expected. There's no surprise. Harmonically, it's a very standard chord progression. It kind of starts with it starts with a theme, and then it ends with a very expected cadence musically. So for someone who's listening to that, this is a major it's in a major key. It's a very harmonious piece and very safe piece to listen to. Whereas if you choose a piece of music, later classical music, something like Shostakovich, or some movie music, then you might evoke a bit bigger, kind of a bigger surprise, and it depends on the child's capacity or the client's capacity to tolerate those surprises.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We are going to wrap up. Thank you so much, Crystal, for coming and sharing your knowledge and experience with music therapy. It's really interesting to me as a play therapist, just the nuances, so to speak, for music therapy and how those can be very similar in a different way with play therapy. So we're going to use those therapeutic powers of play based on our theoretical model, and the same kind of structure with the environment and the toys or whatever activities we're choosing, and the therapeutic relationship. And I think what you did a really nice job of is highlighting the difference between music therapy and play therapy, in that as play therapists, we can use music in the play therapy process. We're going to use music to access those therapeutic powers of play within our therapeutic model. And as a music therapist, you're trained in the nuances of music and sound and how to use that in the healing process. So I appreciate your explanation really about those differences, and then also how you have integrated that different models, right? EMDR and music theory, and found a way to access the power of both, so to speak, for healing. So thank you so much for coming. If people want to reach out to you and connect and chat more about music therapy and how you use that in your work with children and grief and loss and trauma and attachment issues, what's the best way to find you or connect with you?
I think my practice name, Clap and Toot, is probably easier to remember than my full name. If you find me on Instagram, you will know that you will see that we're not very active on Instagram. That's because we spend most of our time in the therapy room. But I do answer messages, or you can add me on LinkedIn and we can have a chat. So my full name is Crystal Luk-Worrall. You can also drop me a message on my website, www.clapandtoot.com.
Awesome. And we're going to post that in the comments. So the website is clapandtoot.com, and we'll post that in the comments. You can find that. And then we'll drop links in the comments for connecting with Crystal on LinkedIn and Instagram. And so thank you for coming, and I will see all of you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Next Level Play Therapy. I hope you found the discussion valuable and gained new insights and ideas to support your work helping children, adolescents, and families heal. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps to improve and reach more people who can benefit from this information. Remember, play therapy is a powerful tool for healing and growth. Whether you're a new play therapist or experienced, I encourage you to continue your learning journey to unlock the potential of play in your own work and relationships. If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media and visit my website at Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training to stay updated on upcoming episodes, trainings, and resources. Thank you once again for listening to Next Level Play Therapy. Until next time, keep playing, learning, and growing.